Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the Department of Electronics and IEEE Ottawa Section, I'm pleased to introduce our speaker. According to Wikipedia, our speaker, John W. Bandler, is a professor, engineer, entrepreneur, artist, speaker, playwright, and author of fiction and nonfiction. John.
Thanks, QJ. Yeah. Thank you, QJ, for keeping it very short. We go back so many years. We could talk for 2 hours about our collaborations, which are ongoing and very, very deep. Okay. Your slides and your posters, allies or foes. I want you to think about that title because we're going to come back to that title later on. Maybe that title bothers you a little bit. Let it bother you if it does. Let's see what happens. We've heard about systems being rigged south of the border in the United States. Apparently systems are rigged. Well, actually systems are rigged by design. You rig a boat. Things have to be rigged. To me, the word rig has a positive as well as a negative connotation. So if I say something is rigged, I could mean something is rigged in a very positive way or something is rigged in a negative way. A system could not work without being rigged. So there's a play on words here. And one of the things we're going to do today is see about this playing with words and how that impacts the way you might be persuaded to do something. At least that's my take on rigged. We're coming back to that later on. Now, most people, most graduate students, unfortunately, do incremental work. People do incremental work because they're afraid of failure, right? That's the biggest drawback, is they're afraid of taking that leap, which is too bad. If you want to learn about failure, which is actually the foundation of success, ultimately, or creativity, you have to fail fast. Read this book by Kathy Kay and Claire Shipman on the confidence code, and you'll find out why it's necessary to fail and why you should fail as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, most of us fail over a long period of time, and we don't realize we've failed until it's too late. Now, there's a whole bunch of things here. Just take them in kind of subliminally. Don't try to read it exactly. But I'm going to handle all kinds of different issues like citations, subtext, theatricality, respecting your audience, ethics, admitting setbacks, bias, trust. I mean, it sounds like a psychology lesson here, right? But anyway, I'm going to cover all these things in one form or another. And clearly, it's going to be hard to cover everything in detail, so I'll give you a taste of some of those things. Now, I'm putting this up here for the following reason. The company Optimization Systems Associates, which was sold in 1997 to Hewlett-Packard, as my company, QJ actually worked with us for a while, made immense contributions before he came to Carleton University. And here's the thing that puzzled me, things that really puzzled me. I went to the to Queen's University in Belfast. I gave a 1-hour seminar, and I told everybody at 5 o'clock when my seminar started, which was supposed to finish at 6. It's 1 hour, but most of you will be here at 8 o'clock tonight. I don't know why I said that. It was bravado. A kind of a murmur and booze went around the audience and said, this guy thinks we're staying until 8 o'clock. He has another thing coming. At 6 o'clock, I stopped speaking. I said, the lecture's over. Nobody moved. They were there till 8 o'clock in the evening. And I could not figure it out. To me, it sounded like something strange. I appeared at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and the guys who were my host looked at their watches and frantically, I have only 10 minutes. What can you tell us in 10 minutes? Listen, I can talk for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you want. You kick me out when you're ready. They were still there 2.5 hours later. I didn't keep them. They just didn't want to leave. At British Telecom, we discovered that our software, the Optimization Systems Associate software, was benchmarking Hewlett-Packard. I said, that's interesting. Hewlett-Packard software is being benchmarked by ours? We might be onto something here. In fact, Hewlett-Packard bought OSA later on. So, I could never really figure this out. Just the whole idea of creativity, cooperation, entrepreneurship, sales pitch, persuading people to go for our software. I just did this intuitively. Now, here's something that I neglected, but I neglected it because you already know my name. Okay, I hope you already know my name. But if on the off chance that you didn't, I should tell you my name is John Bandler. Okay? So my name is. I would suggest that in every speech you give, everywhere, all the time, on every occasion, say your name, articulate your name. If other people can repeat your name after you have articulated it once, your confidence level goes up, people know who you are, they're ready to introduce you to people. The primary, in my view, the primary boost that you can give your presentation is to have your name articulated in such a way that the entire audience can say it clearly without stumbling. I'm being very clear here in this. I hope this is understood. My name is. Ensure your name is easily repeatable. If your name is not repeatable, people will just ignore you. They'll introduce someone else to an important person. They'll tend to bypass you because they will say, I don't know what this person's name is. I think I seem to have forgotten. I don't want to ask that person again. It may not be nice. You've got to be able to articulate your name. Okay, and it would also help to be liked. However, it's called the halo effect, the tendency to like or dislike everything about a person, including things you have not observed, is called the halo effect. I strongly suggest you read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner in economics, although he's a behavioral psychologist. Strongly, you'll learn an awful lot from this. But the halo effect. So having now talked about the halo effect, if you have a pencil and paper in hand, right now, please rate me, the speaker, on a scale of 0 to 10. 10, you think I'm the best thing since the best person you've ever heard speak, and 0 means this guy should really get out of here as quickly as possible. So rate me from 0 to 10, whatever. Don't tell me what it is, but write it down, because you will forget it later on, and you'll change your number if you don't actually write it down. So write it down. I don't want to see it. I'm not going to ask you for it. Tell me, but write it down right now. So while you are speaking, so while I am speaking, you, okay, are studying your poster, your slide, and whatever else. And if you're boring, they'll be studying their shopping list or their laptop or whatever, right? So they'll be studying something. Be kind to yourself. Ensure your name is correctly pronounced. I'm back to the name again. Your name must be correctly pronounced. You're responsible for it. It's your name, not other people. Other people are not responsible to pronounce your name. You are the one who's responsible for the pronunciation of your name. If QJ had introduced me in wrong spelling, wrong pronunciation, and I didn't correct him and I didn't say it, what his version of my name is how I would be known. Okay, ensure your name is remembered, and ensure your message is remembered, and ensure your story is remembered. So we'll see what happens. But you should also be kind to the audience as well as to yourself, and that is the following. Anything new, unfamiliar, demands work. Like words, charts, images, right? Have we ever seen words, charts, and images up here before? Well, every word, chart, or image I put up here is going to demand work from you, okay? This demands work, and I've only changed color. This demands work, and I've only changed color. And now you're wondering, wow, is this the same or is it not? You're actually working. I'm causing you to work. And this is trivial, this is simple. Imagine if it's a complicated chart, and every time a bunch of numbers are flashed in front of you, you start going dizzy. There's a reason you get tired after 5 minutes of watching a technical paper, and that you wish you were somewhere else. There's a good reason. You're just tired. It's just overload. Your system doesn't cope with it. And even just changing the color is already asking you to do work. Don't cram your slides, okay? Don't cram. I'll give you an example of it. And don't cram your posters, since I'm talking about posters as well. A poster is not a whole bunch of slides shoehorned in to the poster. Unfortunately, many of them look like that, but it shouldn't be. So here it is. I mean, don't make it look like this. Now, let me ask you a question. I'll give you 5 seconds to figure this out, and then I'm going to ask you for some inconsistencies or mistakes. Okay, inconsistencies and mistakes, please.
I just counted roughly the amount of times you repeated the sentence?
Okay, no, but there are some inconsistencies there. That's okay. There's no right or wrong answer. There's a, as I say, you'll see when I give you the answer. Can anybody see anything that kind of doesn't fit? Yeah, just shout it out. Don't be shy.
The last column.
Yeah, the last column, for example, there's no. There are no brackets over here, and you can see a little R over here and R residing here. But you had to work to do that, and this is a trivial slide, really. The information is really quite minimal, and yet you had to work, because our brains are looking for patterns constantly. You're searching for something. Why did he put this up here? There must be a reason. So you search, and you search. Oh, why did you do it? Well, I did it just to make your life miserable, because it has no significance at all. But you had to work to do this. And you saw this transition. Obviously, transitions are not very popular these days, which is a good thing. And when PowerPoint first came out, there were transitions galore. They were all over the place. Thank God they don't exist. Avoid them. And avoid things like this. This is what a typical slide looks like, where there's a distracting logo over here, another distracting logo. I did not want to put Coca-Cola here or General Motors or something or CIBC, but you'd get the message, right? Okay? So distracting logos, because they cause you to read this, it distracts you from what's there. And what is this? This is some kind of a distracting template. This is a mess. There's very little information here, but it already looks like a mess. Imagine if there's more detail. So avoid that. Okay, good practice. Let's go down to something very simple and straightforward. Fonts. So every now and then I'm going to relax from the heavy stuff and do something a little lighter, like fonts. Arial or Times New Roman is typical for most technical slides. You should obviously use those. Proofread, spell check, be sparing, be consistent, minimize the font variations, minimize color variations. Sometimes we see slides that are decorated like Christmas trees, and honestly, everything else is lost. If you're an artist, please be an artist. If you're not an artist, don't try to be an artist. It looks awful, okay? Just be yourself, be authentic, okay? And rehearse with an audience. What's the difference between slides and posters? Well, with slides, the speaker, in my case, myself, I control the pace. You can't backtrack. I just have to capture you at that particular moment. But with a poster, if it's a static poster, you can be looking everywhere. You can look at the references, you can look at the conclusions, you can look at the diagrams. As in a textbook or a manuscript, you can go back and forth. But in a talk, in a presentation, which is the focus of this seminar here, you have to have redundancy. You have to be able to repeat things. You have to anticipate that certain points are not going to come across unless you repeat them. You cannot just simply create a well-crafted, tight, redundant, free manuscript and read it. You'll lose people almost immediately. Content. All characters, words, and symbols exist on your slide because you want the audience to read them. Sounds strange, but we often put things on slides that we really don't want the audience to read. I'm not sure why we put it there, but because you want the audience to read them. Except for a reference, a citation, or a URL, I should say. References to other people's work, citation to someone else's work, the URL from where you took that picture off the internet should be there. If you don't have a reference, if you don't have a citation, if you don't have a URL, even if it's just barely visible, it just has to be there. It doesn't have to be readable, but it basically says it's not my work. This slide is my work. I created this slide. Therefore, I have not given a reference to this. I have not put this in quotation marks and assigned it to anybody else. This is mine. Every picture, logo, word, equation, graph that you put on a slide, it's no good having the references at the end, running out of time and flashing them in front of the audience. It's no good. It has to be where you see it. So now, having said that, please catch me if I don't do that myself. Okay, I'm inviting you to catch me. Read your slides to the audience. That's strange. people say, don't read your slides to the audience. And I say, read your slides to the audience. Because the audience is going to read the slides anyway, whether you read them or not. If your slides are verbose, so if you have a lot of text there, unless you tell them right up front, please, I'm going to show you a lot of text. Please just close your eyes, just squint, don't try and read it. Of course, what will happen? You'll still read it. Why is he trying to hide something from me, right? So I really want to read this. We're driven to read everything. But if your slides are verbose, and they have to be for some reason, read it. Read it slowly with the audience to get it over and done with. Otherwise, the audience is getting two inputs, right? One from your mouth and one from the slide, and it's like two people talking to you at the same time. Of course, there's also slide overload. Now, every icon, graphic, bubble, color, transition, animation, etc. is on a slide for one reason. Why is it there? What do you think? Every slogan, every color, every transition is
there because you want to translate that message to the audience.
Okay, yeah, you're there almost. Anyone put that in a slightly better way? He's right. What's that? Because you want somebody to look at it.
I want you to look at it.
Yeah, exactly. It is essential. It's essential. Don't put anything on a slide that's not essential. If your slide has verbiage or art that you want the audience to ignore, tell them up front. It still won't stop them from trying to read it, but at least they won't blame you if they tire themselves out. And say that as soon as possible. So, for example, the next couple of slides will be somewhat verbose, and just take them in as an image, as a piece of art. Don't try and read too much. Just avoid it. Just let it all just wash over you. If I were going to talk about this, if this was my one slide for a 3-minute presentation to a general audience, I would need 3 minutes to discuss this. If I was doing this in a technical paper in a conference, I would flash this on for 10 seconds or 20 seconds, which means even the experts are going to have trouble with this. And here's another one that I've used many, many times in some of my work. This is some of the work that I'm known for. To properly discuss this, even with experts, even with mathematicians, I would need half an hour. And in half an hour, I would not run out of things to say about this. Why would you flash this in front of someone, which I have done, I confess, in 30 seconds? Okay, so, well, this is the principle of space mapping. Boom, we're there. What did I just see? No wonder you get tired, and after enthusiastically going to the first session in a conference on day one, by coffee time you say, it's time to do some sightseeing. Okay? Subtext. Now this is interesting. Once into a persuasion event, subtext comes into play. What is subtext? It's an underlying, often distinct theme with traps and hidden agendas. Subtext is very difficult in general to put into words. It's something that you feel in the gut feeling. Subtext is what makes movies ones that you like, a play that you like, people that you like. It's what they don't say that is important. They say this, but they really mean this. And you know, that's subtext. And I'll try and explain that. Let me do it this way, an example I've given to a number of people, but it's so striking that I feel I should do this again. Senator George Mitchell made this statement on CNN on this day. I heard it myself. I wrote it. I stopped the TV. I played it backwards and wrote this down. He says, the notion of poisoning your own people, I think, is something that is repulsive to everyone. There is some very sinister subtext here. Although this sounds okay. So, yeah, he's a nice guy. He says the notion of poisoning your own people is repulsive. What's wrong with that sentence? Can anybody figure out which couple of words signify some subtext that you should really try to look beneath? That it makes it not as innocent as it seems. 2 words.
I think.
What's that?
I think.
Sorry, speak up.
I think.
I think? No, maybe. That's not what I have in mind now, but maybe we can. That's another thing I can think about, but no, I don't think it's that. Okay. Your own. Read this sentence. The notion of poisoning people, I think, is something that is repulsive to her. But in a way, you're right. It's the I think kind of, that kind of gives a clue. You're right. That's the first time anybody pointed that out, now that I think about this too. But it's it's the idea of your own. So what he wants to do is to say, of course, poisoning people is pretty bad, but if you do it to your own people, it must be even worse. It sounds good. And you hear this, your own, so many times. You hear it all the time, every day, with conflicts that are going on. But what is he saying? He's saying it is sometimes essential, I think, to poison people other than your own. Think about that. It's your own people that's repulsive. He didn't say people. It's your own people. We don't poison our own people. Hey, but maybe under some circumstances, we might have to poison people other than our own. That's the subtext. That's sinister. And that gets you at a gut level that you don't even realize. Something bothers you about that statement. It feels okay, but it doesn't feel okay. That's called subtext. And of course, there's subtext in the title of my talk. You, your slides, and oops, come back. You, your slides, and your posters, allies or foes. But before I do that, look at all this extra adornment that I put here. I mean, does this look nicer? I mean, some people will do this. It's up to you. You know, this looks a little bit more like I'm kind of shoehorning lots of information in there. And actually, this talk was given in San Francisco. An earlier version was given in San Francisco under this name here. And there I put in all these logos, you know, because that's what they like to see. My first slide that had the title had none of these things. Why do we need all this? Do we need this? Okay. We just want to belong somewhere, right? We feel we belong if we have this. Anyway, let's analyze the title. You, your slides, and your posters, allies or foes. The subtext hinges on who are the allies and who are the foes? Who are we talking about? Allies or foes? You, your slides, your posters, are these in conflict with each other? There's something missing. Can anybody quickly think off the top of your head what I've left out here? That's really quite crucial. Yeah.
Left out the audience.
Perfect. That's it. You've said it. Perfect. Great. I'm glad you're catching on to this. It's really good. It took me weeks to figure that out. And to kind of say, oh my God, it's the audience. This is all about me. This title is all about me, not about the audience. This is all about conflicts within me, but the audience. But there's one more chapter to that. And if you can do this, you get 5 stars for this effort. There's another dimension as well, following what you just said.
Well, it's that, again, it's the audience that'll end up making either your slides, your ally, or your foe.
Yeah, you've done it perfectly. Okay, I'll put you out of the misery. The video, the people who are going to see the video later. Yeah. Because if the video isn't properly placed, if the sound quality is terrible or whatever, and I apologize here and now to anybody watching this who has that problem, it means that there's another audience out there. There's the video audience. All these could be somehow in conflict with each other. So I didn't even figure out that subtext in a way in my own presentation. So you, your slides, your posters, your audience. But moreover, even if you're having a video taking, the video audience. Now, listen to this, or take a look at this, read this. There was a program called We Got Him, where Peter Bergen, a well-known journalist, interviewed Barack Obama in the White House. They were walking through the halls of the White House along a red carpet, going around very congenially, very leisurely, as you can imagine, like an afternoon stroll. Peter Bergen says, did torture lead to bin Laden? Does anybody here not understand that statement? He asked, did torture lead to bin Laden? Who here does not understand what that question is? Well, apparently, you don't understand the question? You do understand it. You don't. Osama bin Laden, the guy that was captured in Pakistan, and how did they get him? Okay, we got him. How did they get him? So, did torture of suspects lead to finding bin Laden? Okay, clear question. Apparently, Obama has no idea, because first there was a long silence. He had to think about this. Can you imagine? He had to think about this. Silence. You know. Then he paused. This is like a script for a movie, right? I pause. Do not believe pause, that torture, pause, was, pause, the key to us getting bin Laden. Then there was something I couldn't quite make out. You can't argue counterfactuals. What's counterfactuals? I was totally blown. Makes no sense whatsoever. What ended up being absolutely critical is hard to disentangle. What's hard to disentangle is this statement, this answer. And I heard this, I was in deep shock. Seriously. This to me is someone obscuring, it's like it's a wall. It's like Trump built this wall against subtext. It's impenetrable to figure this out. Until I mentioned this to a friend of mine the very next day, and he found an article in the New York Times that explained it all to me completely. It seems that Obama uses a novelist that he spends a lot of time with, who does nothing but write fiction, to coach him on how to make up stories and answer questions. Like Obama, Ben Rhodes is a storyteller who uses a writer's tools to advance an agenda that is packaged as politics, but is often quite personal. You can go on. There's the link to this. You can find it on the internet. It's a long article. Oh my God, this guy is being coached by a novelist. Now it's clear, because they must have rehearsed this over and over again. So Mr. Obama, what are you going to say if they ask you about torture? Okay, here's how we kind of weave this. But if you look at what Obama is doing right now, he's crystal clear about what he wants. You know exactly what he wants. But he sure doesn't know how to answer that previous question. So it's very depressing. Now, reality according to Trump, I guess you all know Donald Trump, right? Yeah, unfortunately. Now, think about this very carefully. It may take you a little while to just figure out the logic of this. If she wins, the system is rigged. If I lose, the system is broken. Okay? You can figure out there's an issue there, right? So, in other words, I have to win. It's the only possible outcome. I mustn't lose. Somebody got that? Okay. So, because that's the way he speaks. I made this up, but that's the sentiment. In other words, in the same sentence or in the same thing, he can contradict himself, use words like they are putty. And you choose what you want. You don't like this one? Oh, ignore it. Just choose this word. So, it's rigged and it's broken. How can something be rigged and broken? If it's rigged, it's working. It may not be working the way that you want. You rig boats. To me, rig means to assemble something in a system in order to make it work, like a boat. But of course, rig also has the negative. So these are not, it's not an accidental that people use those words. People use those words deliberately to create a fog. It cannot be rigged and broken, but for Trump, it's both rigged and broken, okay? Of course, he would like to fix it. I'll fix it. Oh, it's fixed. It's rigged. But the word fix also has a negative meaning too. You know, I'll go to the bank and fix things for you. Give me your credit card and I'll fix it. I mean, so these words is where subtext is born, okay? And it's a problem. But science can also be deceiving. In fact, Neil Turok, the director of the Perimeter Institute, says scientists very often consciously or unconsciously are driven by agendas well outside science, even if they do not acknowledge them. So trust me, you are all driven by agendas well outside scientists, at least according to him. For example, how many times have you heard or seen a paper open with, we propose, we present, we review, a breakthrough technology, a unified framework, the state of the art. These cliches begin almost every technical paper, even if it presents the most incremental amount of work, novelty. The first is the active voice. We propose, we present, that's active, and of course this up here is passive, because if I say a breakthrough technology is proposed, it's passive. A lot of engineers, scientists like to use the passive voice because they feel it softens the blow. To me, it doesn't. I hear it just as loudly, whichever way you write it. Whether you write it, I proposed, or this was proposed, or is proposed, you're trying to hide behind the passive. It really means the same thing. okay? But sometimes with some of my co-authors, when I've changed things to the active voice, they become very frightened and say, no, let's write it the other way around. So because they understand that there's some kind of subtext behind that. Robert McKee is a very famous screenwriting teacher. I've taken lots of seminars from him on screenplay writing and storytelling and so on. And one of the statements that he's made is, a story persuades because you have to admit both the positive and the negative. So you are more persuasive if you try to admit the positive and the negative. And in fact, it's you prefer hearing things that appear balanced. When you watch TV and you see one candidate being slammed and slammed and slammed and slammed, you know, you turn off. You just can't take it anymore. You say, this makes no sense whatsoever, either in the positive or in the negative direction. What they don't realize is that if you present a balanced view, you're going to make a better case. We sink into these extremes, feeling that we're making the case. We're actually hurting ourselves. So if you want to elevate your work, you want to distinguish your work by distancing somebody else, because how do you raise yourself without depressing someone else, right? It's kind of hard. Even your own. What you do is you admit a few good attributes. You say, well, that work was pretty good. It covered a number of interesting things, but it failed to do this, it failed to do this, it failed to do this. And that's what we're addressing here. And next week, you'll say about this work, well, there were a few good things that were covered here, but now we've discovered that this wasn't covered in this. You can go on endlessly like this. It's a game. But we fall into this because somehow we feel that in order to distinguish our new work, we have to somehow say negative things. The trouble with saying negative things is that reviewers see through it. You can do the same with your friends, elevating your friends. You embrace their work. I say, QJ's work is fantastic. Yeah, you know, he does make spelling mistakes. He gets the occasional reference wrong, but the underlying science is phenomenal. See, I've given you a balanced view. I've given you the negative and the positive. You'll take my word for it, more than if I just simply say, he's outstanding. You say, well, show me. But if I give you something negative, it feels like I'm arguing both cases. It's actually more persuasive. Trouble is, though, with elevating yourself in this way by depressing everything else, and including depressing your own work as being inadequate, the stuff that you submitted to the same journal maybe only a week earlier, is that the reviewers get angry, they see through it, and they feel something isn't right. Okay, references and acknowledgements have conscious and unconscious agendas. References and acknowledgements, as well as missing references and acknowledgements. References or acknowledgement you decide to put in, think about it carefully. Should I mention so-and-so? Oh, maybe he'll see it. Should I not mention so-and-so? You know, they tell a story. So missing references and acknowledgements hide facts and manipulate the truth. So you can manipulate that. So guess what? When I see a paper for the first time, I have a manuscript, one of the first things I do is look at the references, which I can do, of course, in a manuscript. Over-referring to or over-acknowledging the prior work or assistance of others is unheard of. Stop over-referring to these people. Stop acknowledging so many people. Didn't you do any work yourself? You never hear that. What you do hear about under-recognizing and under-praising. So guess what? Almost all of us should do a little bit more praising of other people's work. Err on the side of praising someone who did very little for you. And then say, my God, that feels good. I actually feel good about that. Make you feel better. Getting ready. So before your presentation, choose words wisely, introduce redundancy, introduce pauses, introduce words for effect, memorize and so on, dress thoughtfully. Introduce pauses. Pauses in a script create dramatic tension. Now, only if they're designed that way and only if the actors are following the script properly. If it's because the actor forgot the line or he forgot what to say next, that pause falls flat. But the longer you have a pause, the longer someone is silent, the more the audience, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? So you need pauses. Face your audience quickly, introduce yourself slowly, articulate clearly, embrace your audience. Okay, you embrace your audience. This is how you hold your hands. Control movements, use positive hand gestures, and be authentic. Be yourself. Don't be phony. Be who you really are. Show us who you really are. Now, the art of composition. I'm going to cover now something about art. This is a very famous painting by Vermeer. You can find it on Wikipedia. You can study it. There's all kinds of stuff being written. Very famous. If you look rather carefully, you will see a curtain here that is drawn to the left. The viewer is invited to enter this picture from the bottom left-hand corner. The eye goes up to the painter, and you notice that the painter is looking at something. The painter is looking at the model. The model is looking down at a book. So this is a kind of a classical way of entering a composition in Western art. So I maintain that this point here, where you enter the picture, namely, it's called stage right from a theatrical. From your point of view, I am on the left. From my point of view, I'm stage right. This is the authoritative position to present a paper in. Don't stand on that side. In fact, this is actually intuitively nicely set up so that the speaker is forced to be on this side. Speakers in this room will appear more authoritative than if this was the other way around, because of where you're standing. So this is what you do. There may be some background to this. Think of the statement, right-hand man. Who is your right-hand man? Your friend. You put your friend on your right hand. Why? Because you need to reserve your energy and your power for your enemy, who is over here on the left, so that you can stab him with like this. So you put your friend to the right, and you put so this means you're in a strong position with respect to your enemy. So allies or foes, get the idea? Feeds into that theme of slides and posters being allies or foes. This is, I want to be more powerful than my slide.
Sorry, question.
Yes, question. Yeah.
If the room was set up that the display was on that side, the podium was on this side,
yeah.
would you stand?
I would desperately try to go over there, but sometimes you have no choice because of the setup of the room. Ideally, everything should be symmetrical. The whole auditorium, everything should be symmetrical, if at all possible, which then gives you the choice of where to stand. But if it's asymmetrical, you may have no choice. And right now, this is a little bit awkward for me, because sometimes I'm here, and sometimes I do actually want to go back and look at the slide like this. It's hard for me to walk over there. So I have to walk out this way. So there are constraints that there's an optimal situation, but you have to go by whatever constraints you have as well. Any other questions? But in general, I think this is the authoritative place to stand with respect to the slide. Who does not know the Mona Lisa? Who does not recognize this painting? Like, you're all engineers, maybe some of you haven't heard of it. But anyway, this is probably the most famous painting ever done, Leonardo da Vinci. And look at it. It's on a white background. Oh, it's so awful. White background. I mean, if we have white background in a slide, don't we want to fill it with something? Don't you feel a little, didn't know? I mean, in a gallery, maybe in a gallery they've run out of paint, so they put them on blank walls because they have no paint, right? But you want to decorate it, so I put one of my pieces there too. Doesn't that look a little better? Doesn't that attract you more to the? Okay, this is what most people's slides look like to me. You have the essence of the work, the thing that you really, really want to look at, and because the author or the presenter said, oh, I've got something really interesting, my ego has to come out here, I've got to show the world what I can do. So, you ruin the viewer's experience, right? Okay. So coming back to this idea of where to stand, imagine this is a slide presentation up there. There's my slide right up here, and that's me standing there presenting. Okay, that's me standing there. Okay. Or I could be there. So I could be standing there or there, right? Now, which side looks somehow more comfortable? This one or this one? That one or that one? So who thinks this looks more comfortable, somehow comfortable to the eye? You do one. It's okay. No right or wrong answer, so don't be afraid. So two people think this is okay. And who thinks this is okay? This is better. Okay, more of you. Now, is that because I've just brainwashed you into this idea? But my view is that entering from here, you kind of enter naturally from here, so it looks like there's something here. It doesn't look like this is going to topple over, right? But somehow this space is more bothersome. Okay, so something to think about, where to stand. You are in your own composition. I am in a composition here, not necessarily all of my choosing, because I have to work with whatever is given to me. Your optimal stance, if the screen is center stage, stand downstage right, in front of all barriers. There's a barrier here, so I can't stand in front of it, unless we spent another half an hour moving all the furniture, but I'm not standing behind here. So try and stand stand in front of all barriers. Walk towards the audience, which I've done. Engage through arms outstretched, which I've done. Ask the audience questions, which I've done. Okay, good. Now posters, let's look at posters. Dress as for oral presentation. Hide garbage, clutter, and food. There is nothing worse than to come to a poster session where there's a plate and half-eaten food and drink and so on. Trust me, the impression is a long-lasting one. It really is. Don't eat, fidget, or pace. Like, don't go walk up and down. Manning a poster is tiring, grueling, boring work, and you may be going for long periods of time when there's nobody there. But that one moment when somebody important walks in and catches you eating, fidgeting, pausing with garbage and clutter, your entire reputation is gone. Invite people to your space. Talk to people you don't know. Never ignore anyone present. The tendency is to talk to your friends, and suddenly you engage friends. Oh, how are you? How did you get here? What was your flight like? Was it raining back home? Meanwhile, someone is trying to ask you some questions. That's terrible. Make eye contact with the people that you're with. Stand stage right. Stand stage right, clear of your poster. Don't block the poster in any manner at all. Keep the poster clear. And let nobody monopolize you. So those are all very simple things. Never display your back. I'm not even going to try to do that to show you what it's like to see my back. I do not want to show you my back. But don't display your back by peering into your poster, kind of examining the fine print that you put in the poster. There shouldn't be any fine print in the poster. You should be able to read the poster from a long way away. But if you're there squinting in it and your back is showing to the audience, and never abandon it to go and talk to a friend. Never shun your competitors. You see someone who comes along and you say, no, this is, please, no, okay, thank you, nice to see you. You know, you sort of hide your poster, right? Don't do that. Trade shows, and I've been involved in trade shows, QJ, as you know. That's my wife, Beth, in a booth from many, many years ago. This was the mid-90s or so, the software that we were offering. And by the way, if you look at this, from the point of view of composition, this is purely accidental. I didn't know this then, really wasn't thinking of it. It really is natural to enter it from here. The way things are angled, the diagonal, and the entry point is actually from the left, bottom left-hand corner. And, you know, so it looks a little more welcoming than if you see a bunch of people with their backs turned to you. Trade shows. You can ask me more questions about trade shows. I've done lots of those, and I've stood for day after day after day, standing up with feet totally like lead. You know, it feels terrible, but that's what it is. Okay, let's look at some artistic initiatives. I've done a number of stage plays. Let me play a little bit of this.
Jerusalem's a real place. Daddy says so too.
Your daddy's dead.
Oh no. No, he speaks to me.
I've told you, begged you over and over.
Daddy likes me like this.
Shut up! You're not to wear your eyeglasses until further notice. Take them off at once and act your age.
Don't you, Daddy?
So that's a promotional clip from one of my plays. Okay, that's a photo that I took from one of my plays. I give myself credit right down here. I didn't have to do that. If I didn't give this credit, that would be, you would have to assume I took that picture. So just think to yourself how many pictures you've taken and never acknowledged. Now, I want to play this. I want to play this to some extent to its entirety. It's 2 minutes, and I may stop it and we'll analyze it. I wrote this script. I actually wrote this script, too.
So, Jazera Jones, Miss Jazera Jones, asked me to say a few words about this play, this story thing she's working on. Well, it's not exactly hers, is it? It's about shoehorning Professor Kalatakis into this surefire Pulitzer. Jazera's Triangle. Yes, that's what it's called. It's about this weekend at the president's house. Well, not like President Obama's. I mean like the president's house on campus. You know, where we put up the big shots, the out-of-towners, the suits. So what's this story about anyway? Well, Lester calls a meeting with Darian, guy whose guts he hates from way back, and Darian's student, some foreigner from Istanbul or somewhere, an engineer like Darian, right? Lester wants to know all about the firebombing in Darian's lab. And me, I'm around to serve up whatever the boys want. And Jazera bursts in. I'm like a reporter from the Times. Is President Barack Obama anywhere around? But not like the time she burst in on me and Lester. Lester was her English prof then, and I was Lester's... What? Oh, me? Oh. Well, I'm like Candy Quill. That's Quill. Q-U-I-L... running out of what? Oh, I'm like getting to the point. So there was this yelling and shouting and national security and hidden mics and then these cops and these helicopters and they're all over us like the gates of hell had just opened up and they start shooting the place up. Do I give away the ending or something? No. Okay, how'd I do?
That was in the voice of the character. And one of the things, if you want to go over that and kind of reverse engineer it, the stakes are raised constantly. If you see it carefully, it starts off with a little bit of a hook, and then it gradually raises the tension. Suddenly Barack Obama comes into the picture, and then there's firebombing in the lab, and then there's helicopters and shooting happening, and so on, right? So that's written in a way to promote this play. I wrote it in the voice of the character. That's not the voice of the actress. So she was mimicking the voice of the character. So I've written scripts for various things, not just academic, but also, and there's another video that you can see on the internet, which I did in 2013, that covers a lot of other stuff relating to creativity and risk and so on. And I gave a number of talks like this as well. Awareness, creativity, and creative thinking. Don't dodge ethics on your route to success. Creativity, cooperation, and conflict. So that was some other stuff that I've done. Now let's come to the 3-minute thesis that I've got heavily involved in, 3MT. How many of you have not heard of it? How many of you have not heard of the 3-minute thesis? Just are curious. Raise your hand, yeah. Be bold, raise it so I can see it. Okay, yeah, few, half a dozen, okay. Well, the idea is that you present to a general audience the results of your research in an engaging and compelling way, and you are supported by one static slide. And that static slide, that slide is up for 3 minutes, or as long as 3 minutes. If you run over 3 minutes, you're disqualified. I've been involved in this for over 2 years now. I coached the McMaster winner in 2015. I coached the McMaster winner in 2016. We went on to the Ontario finals. And one of the things that really blew me this year was the quality of the competition in 3-minute thesis is amazing. Very high competition in this. So in a 3-minute thesis that you're supposed to deliver to a general audience, you're supposed to avoid jargon, not get stuck in the weeds. You must include metaphors. I'll show you one of those in a moment. Include human stories. You deliver an overview. We sometimes say, can you talk down to me? In other words, can you bring it down to my level? I look at it entirely the other way around. Can I bring it up to your level? You give overviews to people, not underviews. Okay, I'm playing with words here. Most people would say, can you come down to my level from this high pedestal and tell me what it is you're doing? I would reverse that. I should say, could you please come up to my level and give me an overview? Okay, playing with words. I like words, so I play with them, as you can see. And the conference that I'm associated with, the International Microwave Symposium, Erin, Kiley, and I proposed a 3-minute thesis competition, and it's now online. When you submit a paper, you can indicate whether you want to enter this. At this moment, at the time of writing, the first prize will be $1,000. And this is in addition to all the other things that you do. You have to get your paper accepted in the first place. In a way, it's like the student paper competition. You have to get it accepted in the first place and go from there. So if anybody has any questions about that, of course, I know all about that. I'm heavily involved in this. Let me give you an example of a 3-minute thesis, an example of a metaphor. Teng, McMaster University, here's a metaphor. 1 + 1 is greater than 2. We have to use that very carefully. You know, you can say, if you say that to a mathematician, you may say, well, wait a moment, there's something wrong with this picture. But you look at that as a metaphor, okay? That's his one slide. There he is, you know, with his arms outstretched, stage right, more or less in the right location, okay? And let me play a little bit of this for you.
Good afternoon. My name is Teng. I'm with the McMaster Automotive Research Group. My research is on electric motors. These are machines that convert between electricity and mechanical power. We see electric motors everywhere. They power fans, pumps, and washing machines. Any electric motor has 2 components: the rotating piece, the rotor, and the stationary piece, the stator. My specialty is the double rotor motor. A double rotor motor is essentially a combination of 2 individual motors.
He ended the sentence with double rotor motor and began the next sentence with the double rotor motor, because for a general audience, double rotor motor, when he said it initially, it was incomprehensible, the double rotor motor. Nobody can understand that in general. So I said, okay, let's practice this work, make it clear. Okay, now, just in case the audience didn't get, start the next sentence with the double rotor motor. We worked on this for 2 months.
My research goal is to make double rotor motor, or the 1 + 1 motor, better than 2 separate motors. That is, to make one motor that performs as 2, but occupies a smaller space and uses less material.
And notice the pauses. He leaves lots of pauses there. These are all, they're not accidental. Nothing is accidental, not even the length of his tie.
The design idea is simple. Suppose you are a builder. How would you save money on building one house for 2 persons instead of 2 individual houses?
I think just seeing that, you sort of captured. It goes on like this. This image will continue sort of for 3 minutes. Anyone think that was a bad presentation? No? Okay. So you know, as I say, and it was a pleasure working with him because he was so, you know, so willing. He was absolutely delighted to work with me on this. Anna Kovacevic is a kinesiology student, and her work is looking at the effects on dementia and Alzheimer's, sort of preventing various cognitive disorders through certain levels of exercise. Okay, and that's her slide. Again, we worked for a month and a half. It's only a 3-minute speech, right? So you can go and browse through those things on the internet. If you have any questions on that, as I say, please let me know. No questions? Okay, make an impact. Oh, there's a question there. Yes. I swore I would not take questions from above that thing, but maybe you came in later, so I'll excuse you. Okay. Are they allowed to move? In general, yes, but you know, it's nice that you observed that. The trouble is the videographer likes to work presumably with a fixed focus, and once everybody lined up and puts a little patch and says, stay there. And so they tend to stay there, which is a little bit of a pity. So I think that was a constraint that the videographer suggested. You are A. Einstein from the patent office in Bern, and you're in a 3-minute thesis competition. In 3 minutes, you want to explain to the masses what E equals mc squared is. Masses, there's a little play with subtext there. E equals mc squared. Question, do you need nice other adornments? Do you need nuclear reactors? Do you need mushroom clouds? Do you need any clouds at all? Do you think Einstein could have spoken for 3 minutes to a general audience indicating the implications of this without any other adornment? Do you think it lacks decoration? Does it? Maybe the patent office should have had a logo here, right? Or should have had a bunch of logos here. You really associate those logos with this. I mean, this is so important. I mean, everything else just has to disappear in comparison. Okay? So if you have something really strong to say, you don't have to decorate it. So think, when you decorate it, what are you saying? I don't think this is really very strong. I don't really believe in it. I'm kind of bury it. Maybe nobody will see it. On the other hand, another student comes along, E. Albert, and says, I will tell you in 3 minutes why E does not equal m squared. So suddenly the tension in the room goes up because the audience says, how soon is this guy going to bury himself, right? So, yeah, you don't really need much more than this. This is enough to wake everybody up and say, let's see what this guy says in 3 minutes. Or you're a neuromodeler, your QJ's neuromodeler system now composes music, and Ludwig, you've created Ludwig, a self-optimizing neurosymphonic framework, and of course this is the opening from Beethoven's Fifth. We talked about that just a little while ago. And this is the most famous opening. Now here, really in a 3-minute presentation by this candidate, is this enough? Or does the candidate have to take the entire score of the symphony and cram it into this one slide? Really, think about that. So again, what I'm saying is if you have something really important to say, you can say it in just a few words. You don't have to decorate it. You don't have to surround it with decorations and so on. One of the things that bothers me, and if someone has ideas on this, how to cite and acknowledge people during a 3-minute thesis presentation. I mean, you know, trouble is with citations and acknowledgements is they sort of interfere with the flow, they interfere with the story. So I'm not sure, it's something I'm going to have to work on. How to bring in some kind of a citation to your supervisor, your group, your colleague, the people who've done work before in this area in such a way that it still remains engaging. To me, that's still an open question. And then which aspect ratio should you use? Now, the 4:3 is the aspect ratio of this slide, but of course the HD movie format is 16:9. And many of these 3-minute thesis slide formats are going to be 16:9. Now, unfortunately, you can't just take the 4:3 and just turn it into 16:9. You can do that. The text will not scale, but unfortunately the pictures, the JPEGs, will stretch. So you have to rescale those. But the problem is it's now a composition. A composition in 4:3 is different from a composition in 16:9. It's different. You have to recompose the whole thing. You can't just, the conversion is easy, but you have to really recompose from an artistic point of view. So it's technically easy, but compositionally different. Okay, authenticity wins. You have to respect your audience, respect your sources, and respect your commitment. One of the things that I think is a huge failing, and I think you should all make note of this, one of the big failings is your commitment to the long haul. I've watched 3-minute thesis presentations, I've watched thesis defense presentations, and so on, and if the commitment at the end of this presentation is such that you don't think that this candidate is really going to continue in that area, it puts a huge damper on the entire work. If, for example, there's a thesis in electromagnetics, and I've made all these breakthroughs in electromagnetics, and this is all wonderful work, brand new breakthrough technology, and so on and so forth, and one of the examiners says, so where are you working after you finish this PhD? Oh, I have a job as a software engineer at a bank. I mean, that's just a damper. There's nothing wrong with that job, but I mean, you've just destroyed something. So coming back to 3-minute thesis, when watching those 3-minute theses and deciding, do I like this or do I not like it, think what that candidate has implied or said about being in it beyond the end of that. And if it looks like this is a terminal, you've praised this work, this is really useful, and it's enormous, and this is what it'll do for mankind, but you give the impression that you've stopped and you're going into something else, the audience can sense that. There's a kind of a lack of enthusiasm, because the candidate could say, I'm starting a company. I've got people together. People are giving me money. I'm putting my money into this. I'm selling my house. Then you say, oh, this guy's really going ahead with this. But if the speaker is completely silent on that, it actually creates a damper. So that's something people don't often realize. Can you communicate your expertise, your journey, and your setbacks? Most people hide setbacks, but in drama, you go and watch a movie or a play because of all the setbacks, all the things that happen, the drama. Drama is not all happy, happy, happy. If it's all happy, 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 you just switch it off. You say, this is all too good to be true. This isn't real. Then why, when you're doing a thesis presentation or a paper or any presentation, is it always positive? That's one reason it gets boring. As soon as you say, my equipment exploded, trust me, all the audience would suddenly wake up. Wow, let's see what happened. I mean, we all have setbacks. We all go down the wrong way. We all have dead ends. Say that you spent 3 months going down a completely wrong turn, why you did it, and what you learned at the end of it. And the audience will actually be interested. So promote your vision, your theme, and your message. A bad impression is a lasting impression. So I'm going to end with a bad impression of some of this. Now, quickly, just shout them out. No etiquette here. As soon as you find it, let me know. What is there somehow wrong or inconsistent about any of these things that you see? Reference is spelled wrong. Good. More. Just keep them coming. Fonts. Good.
There's no order of references, so I don't know when it's...
Oh, you mean the numerical value?
Yeah.
No, that's okay. I wouldn't worry too much. That's okay, but that's fine. Any other? Just shout it out. Yeah, a different format. You see, this is Times Roman. This is one kind of abbreviation. This is a different abbreviation. There's a capital letter here, lowercase here. There's a sort of what looks like a minus sign over here, whereas this is a hyphen. I see this in seconds. I just go like this. Guess what I do when I look at a paper that comes across my desk? What's the easiest thing for me to do? I don't even have to know anything about the subject. I go to the references. I look at this, and I say, okay, this guy's going to have a hard time convincing me, or she will have a hard time convincing me that this work is meticulous, carefully thought out, and that I trust anything that this person is going to say. It looks like the references were copied and pasted from different places. Format wasn't adjusted. There's no eye for any of this. If you don't have an eye for this detail, why would you have an eye for numerical values or decimal points or fine precision? The trust is gone, and that first impression has already demolished. It is highly unlikely that a paper would come across my desk which had references like this that I could possibly accept. It doesn't matter what the content is. The content is now immaterial. I just don't trust it. Talks versus manuscript. So in a talk like this one, first impression, you have that at the start. In a manuscript, your first impression can happen anywhere. That's what you just said. In a talk, you don't see those references, for example, until often very end. In a manuscript, you can just jump around very quickly, get a quick idea of what it is, and you've made up your mind. The decision to accept or reject a paper I maintained is probably done in the first 20 seconds of looking at it. I challenge anyone to say otherwise. The rest of the time, which could be an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever time you think, is to confirm that first impression. You will look for confirmation of your first 20 seconds worth of. Yeah, so beware of that. Okay, before you can start to think outside the box, right? Thinking outside the box is what everybody says. You have to figure out who's holding down the lid. And that person may be you. Okay? And I believe you should think outside the box because failure is going to be part of it. So fail, do something, fail 5 times in 3 months on something spectacular, then fail slowly on something that's really, really safe and is never going to lead anywhere. So take a risk, present something that's unforgettable. So this is what we've covered. I'm coming to the end here. The importance of your name, of articulation, of being liked, etc. We've covered all this stuff. Just take an overall impression of this. The art of composition, the fact that you are in your own composition, making an impact, being authentic, admitting setbacks. Really, if I do nothing, if I achieve nothing at all from this entire thing, but just to get you to admit setbacks, I think I've succeeded, even if you do nothing else. So, some acknowledgements. My good friend, John Vlachopoulos, who helps me on an awful lot of this. My wife, Beth Bandler. Some other people. You'll notice Teng here, the 3-minute thesis person. Erin, Kiley, who's working with me on the 3-minute thesis for the conference. Anna Kovacevic, the 3-minute thesis candidate that I just showed you. George Ponchak, a former editor of the Transactions. Tom Macken, he's an award-winning theater director, and various other people. So this is my official thank you with all kinds of nice logos and pictures to show you I can do that too and put them in. So my official talk is over, and I'm open for any questions on any subject that you like.
Okay, we thank Dr. Bandler.
Very interested in how you actually got interested in, say, drama when engineering is such a sort of depersonalized field.
Yeah.
You know, and I would really like to know, like, what led you in.
What led me into what's that word that you used? Drama. Drama. Oh, drama. Yeah, yes, of course, drama. Oh, exactly. Sorry, I didn't quite catch. Yeah, what led me into drama? Because, well, I can tell you, in 1995, at the height of my commercial activities with respect to my company, my wife put me in contact with her mother and said, look after John and take him to your studio and put him to work. So she put me to work in art. I started painting. So for many years I started painting, and then the painting led me to art history, which initially I thought I wouldn't like, but then just fell in love with. In the meantime, I accidentally wrote a story in around the year 2000, and having written that story, that led to a novel, that led to stories, that led to a screenplay and stage plays. I was just hooked going in that direction. But having gone into writing, having discovered creative writing, I dropped art. I could not sustain painting and writing at the same time. It's incredibly strenuous.
But do you find that being creative is integral to being an engineer?
Yes.
Scientist?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know, the thing to do is, and this is what but even in my writing, there are writers that censor themselves as they write. And I don't do that. I don't censor myself as I write. I say, I don't have to show this to anybody. I'm just going to write. These are my characters. This is what my character says. I don't know why my character is saying this right now, but just go with it. Many writers are horrified. Oh my God, I can't say this to anybody. So they censor it. And At the same time, when I talk about engineering things, and particularly space mapping, as QJ knows, my area, there are cognitive aspects to this, cognitive. So I've somehow found links between my mathematically based research, cognition and neuroscience, psychology, and some of these things are kind of psychological issues here, creating characters and taking other people's points of view. So I mean, if we know each other, let's say for 2 or 3 weeks, I will be able to write in your voice. I can actually write, I can hear, when I hear you speak, the idea is I can enter you and my writing would sound just like you. I've written pitches for plays in the voices of the actresses that were in the show, such that they nailed it in 2 takes, because they didn't stumble over the words. It was just came out so naturally. So I find that there's a lot of synergy between these. The trick sometimes is to know when the left brain should keep quiet and the right brain should, speak up a little bit. I mean, there is occasionally a bit of a fight going on. But I can swing from one to the other in a single hour. So you've heard some of my theatrical writing. I mean, that's not how I speak, right? But it's certainly how my actors speak.
When you're talking about the lid, I'm
Yeah.
thinking about how my thesis defense is going to go.
Yes.
I'm expecting that there are certain, requirements that I'm going to have to take.
Yes.
And, how do you think about unconstraining that, or would you?
Well, let me tell you something that's really interesting. This is paradoxical. When you're writing a story, when you're creating a universe, you actually need to create constraints, because the constraint is what forces you to be creative. So, for example, the play that I showed you a video of at the very beginning, called Christmas Eve at the Julie B. Motel, it takes place in the lobby of a motel. The entire action takes place in the lobby of a motel. And I've purposely done that. It puts a huge constraint, but that constraint actually liberates you. Because if you had free rein to do anything, it'll be like a complete mess. So the constraints can be for a creative point of view. You want to create a universe. Let's say it's science fiction, for argument's sake. You can't just have anything goes. You create that universe. It has to follow certain rules. It has to be rigged, in Donald Trump's terms. You have to rig it, okay, or fix it, set those rules, and then the story has to follow those rules. Because if the story breaks those rules later on, the audience is disappointed. Oh, come on, you set this thing up, and now you're breaking this rule. So in art, constraining yourself in a certain way can be highly beneficial. It forces you to be creative within that environment. On the other, the paradoxes or the irony is, if you in scientific work, if you put those constraints on, then your mind is not thinking freely. You censor things. Oh, that's off the wall. Oh, that can never happen. That is a perpetual motion machine. That'll never work. But my feeling is, let it out. Let it happen. There's a reason why your brain wants that to get out. Wash it out. You don't have to put it into a paper. So there are ways of tricking your brain into being creative. Yeah.
So let's thank our speaker again. Thank you very much.
Before you go, I want you to do that rating very quickly. Okay? Do it in your head. Look at what you did before. Let me ask you all a question. How many of you made a dramatic change in whether you like me or not? You made a dramatic change? Okay. Did it go positive or negative?
Yeah, well, I'd like to...
At the beginning?
I came in late.
You came in. That's okay. So there was no big change. I mean, generally speaking, whatever you thought about me at the beginning, you think at the end. So to me, that's confirmation of first impressions. Whatever first impression you had of me, is one that tends to allow. That first impression is very powerful.